Good morning. Our announcements this morning, as you're finding your seats, is that the penultimate potluck will return on Friday, October 20th at 6 p.m. And if you, no microphone. I am on. I'm on. If you are interested, Caroline, could you please just put your hand up? If you're interested in the penultimate potluck, contact Caroline. The Care Day that was canceled yesterday will be happening in November on the 4th and the 5th. If you are interested, see Donna Morris. Donna, could you please just raise your hand? Thank you. A Care Day is a day in which the grounds and buildings, or just grounds? Grounds and buildings of the congregation are cared for by members of the congregation. On Tuesday, October 24th, there is a trunk or treat event from 4:30 to 6:30. If you are interested, please contact Caroline. Regarding my office hours and times to see me, when I am in the pulpit on a Sunday morning, I am here all through Sunday, and I am here the following Monday morning with office hours downstairs in the parish house from 9 to noon. You'll have to come in the back door of the parish house. We're working on getting the bell. The bell, it rings, but it sometimes takes a while till the person inside hears it. So you may have to do it a few times. On the Mondays when I am not here, and the Sundays when I am not in the pulpit, I have Monday morning virtual office hours on Zoom. The link is published in the perspective. And if you wish to meet with me on a Sunday because Monday morning doesn't work when I'm here, please contact me and we'll set up a mutually convenient time. Thank you. Welcome to First Parish Unitarian Universalist Northborough. We Unitarian Universalists are a non-creedal, religiously liberal faith tradition. We hold in our worship and in our faith formation that each individual and each community will explore a wide and varied set of beliefs and ideas that encourage us to live life as a spiritual journey, deepening our connections to compassion, justice, and an understanding of eternal truths. I am Reverend Abigail Stockman, the interim minister. If you have any questions about Unitarian Universalism or First Parish Church, please don't hesitate to be in touch with me. We are a community in multiple locations, so let's take a moment to greet one another silently by waving to those online and those around us until the chime is rung. And for those online to wave to us. I think we have a bird. Come into the shelter of these walls. Leave the first cool winds of autumn outside. Let the winds blow away for this hour the certainties and stresses of the masks we wear daily for others' benefits, not the masks that keep us safe from germs. Let these walls become a sanctuary away from the stress. Sit down and just breathe. Leave at the doorway your worries about the future, the past. Just be. Just be here. Just be here now, breathing in peace, breathing out love. Be here now, imagining the embrace of a love that is creative and eternal, known by thousands of names, including emptiness. Make of this hour and this place a sanctuary where the freedom of being might flourish and open us to encounter our true selves. Come, let us worship.
We'll now light our chalice. A flame of freedom, a light for exploration, the warmth of genuine compassion, within, among, between, and beyond. You can now stand as you are able to sing the hymn number 355 in your gray hymnal. We lift our hearts in thanks.
There is a reading this morning, not printed in the order of service. The reading this morning is The Guest House by Jalaluddin Rumi, who lived in the 1200s. And this translation is by Kabir Helsinki, a Western-born Sufi sheikh in the Malevi order. The Malevi order are what many of us may know as whirling dervishes. Darling, the body is a guest house. Every morning someone new arrives. Don't say, oh, another weight around my neck, or your guest will fly back to nothingness. Whatever enters your heart is a guest from the invisible world. Entertain it well. Every day and every moment, a thought comes like an honored guest into your heart. My soul, regard each thought as a person, for every person's value is in the thought they hold. If a sorrowful thought stands in the way, it is also preparing the way for joy. It furiously sweeps your house clean in order that some new joy may appear from the source. It scatters the withered leaves from the bough of the heart in order that fresh green leaves might grow. It uproots the old joy so that a new joy may enter from beyond. Sorrow pulls up the rotten root that was veiled from sight. Whatever sorrow takes away or causes the heart to shed, it puts something better in place, especially for one who is certain that sorrow is the servant of the intuitive. Without the frown of clouds and lightning, vines would be burned by the smiling sun. Both good and bad luck become guests in your heart, like planets traveling from sign to sign. When something transits your sign, adapt yourself and be as harmonious as its ruling sign, so that when it rejoins the moon, it will speak kindly to the Lord of the heart. Whatever sorrow comes again, meet it with smiles and laughter, saying, "Oh, my Creator, save me from its harm, and do not deprive me of its good. Remind me to be thankful. Let me feel no regret if its benefit passes away. And if the pearl is not in sorrow's hand, let it go and still be pleased. Increase your sweet practice. Your practice will benefit you at another time. Someday your need will be suddenly fulfilled." Thus ends the reading. Let us remain seated as we join together singing "Draw the Circle Wide." The words will appear on the screen. Let us join together this morning in the spirit of prayer, in a time of silence. After a few moments of silence, I will invite us to remain seated wherever you are, and let us sing together a cappella. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. And then we will sing, "May you and may we." And we'll do it all a cappella, just the best we can as a prayer. Let us enter into the silence that we may hear the workings of our own spirit, our own soul, our own being, as we speak to whatever it is that we hold most holy. Amen.
Our financial offering each week is shared between the general operating fund of this church and a designated nonprofit organization. For the month of October this year, we set aside the half plate as a donation to the Nipmuc Indian Development Corporation, or NIDC. We do this because this church and many of the homes we live in sit on land that was forcibly or deceitfully taken from the Nipmuc who lived here. We, as inheritors of this church, have benefited economically from this ownership, while the descendants of the Nipmuc have not. From their website, we understand that the mission of the NIDC is to assist in the revitalization of the Nipmuc Indian community through the promotion and provision of culturally appropriate community and economic development programs. The NIDC was created in 1999 to serve the needs of the Nipmuc community. The NIDC intends to promote and broaden the cultural, economic, educational, and social levels of tribal members and their neighbors living within and outside our homelands. Our goals include to foster community-wide interest and participation in the issues of the Nipmuc community, strengthening the cohesiveness and stability of the tribe, to promote opportunities for tribal members to achieve economic self-sufficiency through the development of educational, employment job training, small business development, and affordable housing programs, to preserve, maintain, and provide Nipmuc social, cultural, and educational programs for our children, elders, and families and the greater community. May we continue to be as generous as we are able. The offering for the work of this congregation and the work of your discretionary fund will now be gratefully received and we hope gratefully given.
Because we all understand things a bit differently, because none of us are exactly the same. We don't hear things and see the world through exactly the same eyes. Here is a second and much shorter translation of Rumi's poem, The Guest House, this one by Coleman Barks. This being human is a guest house. Every morning a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness. Some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. Thus ends the reading. This holiday weekend is one that many of us grew up calling Columbus Day weekend. We were nursed and then weaned on the story of Christopher Columbus, the curious wayfaring Italian who wanted to go explore the world, had an idea that it might be round. Alas, since he was neither a king nor a queen, he could not pay for this exploring adventure by himself, so he needed a ruler or two to give him the money for this exploration. In my childhood mind, hearing this story, the funding by the King and the Queen of Spain was the equivalent of getting my parents' permission to cross the street or go buy candy. King Ferdinand II and Queen Isabella I of Spain, who did give him the money, were portrayed in this history as benevolent leaders. This piece of the story was consistent with other childhood stories like Cinderella, who needed the benevolent ruler prince to save her. Even if those fairy tales were not histories in the mind of a child, there were similarities. In the story of Christopher Columbus, as much as in the fairy tales, the ordinary people had no power. The power belonged to the leaders. The king and the queen were portrayed as curious, thoughtful people who were thrilled to have this Mr. Columbus excited to go on an exploratory adventure to prove that the world was indeed round, and that you could get to the East Indies by going west and not just by going east. There might have even been some implication, as I heard this story, that this was because the king and queen's own scholarship and intellectual exploration led them to the same conclusion, and they were happy to have Columbus prove it. And what happened? He never got to the East Indies, but he got to us. That was the way I heard this story as a child. He got to us instead. Well, not quite us maybe, but close enough to lead the next set of explorers to us. This is the outline of the childhood history I, and perhaps you as well, were given about why we, the then future citizens of the United States, celebrated Columbus Day. We know now, both as adults and as a culture that is changing, much more about this once simple hero story. We are increasingly acquainted with its complexities and motives that were not at all benign, that were not at all necessarily much about intellectual curiosity to learn something concrete through exploration, but instead showed the lines of to learn something through exploration, and instead was an act of conquering. The lines of interconnection have been drawn that identify the places where greed for power and wealth and dominance that were motivating factors behind that initial voyage into uncharted waters still have resonance in our society 700 years later. Greed's destructive qualities began by decimating the indigenous population of Taino that Columbus and his crew first encountered through their exposure to smallpox, influenza, and other illnesses from Europe. One website I read that what may have been as few as 600,000 and as many as several million people, in over 50 years, the population, because of disease, was decimated to 500. For the indigenous people who survived the illness that came with the Europeans, they were enslaved so that they could provide the goods that the conquerors wanted. Columbus really wasn't so much an explorer. Whatever curiosity he had was likely overridden by a need to satisfy, if not his own personal greed, the greed of his employers and benefactors, the king and queen, who claimed for themselves the land and people he encountered. Note, he did not discover anyone. They may have discovered him. Claiming ownership and forcibly taking ownership is an act of violence. And violence is an act of conquering. Columbus was a conquistador, a conqueror. After claims of ownership by the Europeans who came to the Americas, there became a rigidly stratified society of givers and takers that was established, leading to centuries of dominance by the takers and centuries of enforced poverty for the givers. The takers made themselves and their thinking, their culture, and the structure of their society and their religion as the supreme authority. They did this through violent means. We hear the word violence and we often only imagine physical violence, but violence is not always physical. It can occur through separating people of a culture from one another, from their cultural context, from their language, from the things that empower them and give them a sense of meaning and purpose as human beings. The biblical stories of Jewish exile are extraordinary examples of how to effectively kill off a people's spirit, to separate them from their places of identity, from their holy and sacred places that gave their lives meaning and purpose. The song we sometimes sing, "By the waters of Babylon, we lay down and wept. We lay down and wept for thee, Zion. We remember thee, remember thee, remember thee, Zion." It is a lament of people torn from their roots and their meaning, place of meaning, and their place of connection with one another. Similarly, in a book called Symphony for the City of the Dead, M.T. Anderson describes how Stalin took control in Russia by upending the use of language and by enforcing it with terror, by redefining the word truth. It sapped the ability of the people to fight back. For when there is no way to know what you share meaning about, you have no common ground. This is what happens in acts of conquering. To the Spanish monarchs and Columbus of those days, the possibility that you could get to India and its neighbors to obtain rare spices by going west instead of east, and that it might possibly save time and money, because even then in Western culture, efficiency as a way to production to support greed was valued. And this was so valuable that it was worth the expenditure of time and money, and most importantly, of human lives other than their own. The entire idea of conquering, of gathering power and resources to gain control over, is the idea of supremacy, of making oneself or one's culture the supreme and the final authority of right and wrong, of culture, of social norms, of everything. There are still places today where Euro-Western culture goes to get resources that it needs for computers. For hundreds of years, it went into the Amazon. We went into the Amazon to get rubber and interrupted many indigenous peoples who had never seen white faces before. It continues. This week, in a spiritual practice class I'm taking, we were asked to reflect on this question: from what have you yearned, or do you yearn to be free in your life? I have yearned to be free from the constrictions received early and often in my life, constrictions being those ideas and beliefs, adages, creeds, and sometimes even offered as common sense ideas, but were always about limitations, specifically my limitations, the things I could not do because I was small or female or white or of Jewish heritage or from a family that didn't do those things, but also limitations on social activity and social location and education and career that arose from ideas about social and economic class. I questioned them all. I continue to question them and yearned to be free from their binding nature. On my dreams as I mature, and as I matured and noticed the other people around me, that others were also bound and constricted often by similar kinds of learning, I noticed the binding on many people's dreams of human possibility. So I ask you to just take a moment in your own life where there are constraints and strictures placed upon you as a child, or that you place upon yourself as an adult, that said you couldn't do things that you subsequently have learned to do. 8 months ago, I was told that I would never be able to do push-ups again because of the break in my wrist. This morning, for the beginning of the fourth week in a row, I did push-ups. What are the strictures that you've encountered that have told you you cannot be who you are? I was an enthusiastic and determined teenager when I set off on this voyage to remove these binding thoughts and beliefs. I'm still doing the work. May I be blessed enough to do so until I die. May you also be similarly blessed, and may we also be similarly blessed. My efforts for the better part of 30 years were all about control. They were efforts to conquer my impulses, thoughts, habits, and emotions, my physical body at times, and even sometimes my own ideas. I was out to conquer myself in order to become enlightened enough to remove the bindings and limitations I'd been told I had. I did not welcome, to quote Rumi and Coleman Barks, I did not welcome the joys, the depressions, and the meannesses. Well, maybe I tried to welcome the joy, but I did not meet the dark thoughts and the shames and the malices at the door laughing. I met them with denial. I don't do that. Maybe you do, but I don't. In my days of self-conquering, there were thoughts, these were the kinds of thoughts I barred the door to. I acted in just the manner that Helsinki, in his translation of Rumi, advises against. He says, don't say, oh, another weight around my neck, but I did. He says, or your guest will fly back into nothingness, and that was my hope. That was my intention. I could not believe that the way to was the way through. I kept trying to go around. Now, I want to be clear here about the differences between our typical daily feelings and emotions and those that sometimes mark a deeper, more enduring challenge to our mental health. The word depression, as Barks uses it, does not refer to what we call clinical depression. In those days of conquering myself in order to get rid of the limitations, certainty had a hold of me. So much so, I was certain I knew what was right and good and necessary for many years of this spiritual journey I was on. In hindsight, I knew that my certainty, that I knew the way to do this, got in the way of authentic, genuine, spiritual, emotional growth and maturity. And yet, in spite of myself, in spite of all the roadblocks and denial and certainty, there was enough grace in life that allowed for enough slow maturing in myself of a sort. Perhaps you have had similar experiences. In those days of being a spiritual conqueror, certain of what I needed, I was a good example of the Zen parable about a cup of tea. One version goes like this: Nan-in, a Japanese master during the Meiji era, received a university professor who came to inquire about Zen. Nan-in served tea, and he poured his visitor's cup full and then kept on pouring. The professor watched the overflow until he could no longer restrain himself and said, "It's overfilled, no more, we'll go in." "Like this cup," Nan-in said, "you are full of your own opinions and speculations. How can I show you Zen unless you first empty your cup?" This is how I would define the state of being a spiritual conqueror. It's a time when we are certain we know what is right, and we are certain we know the right way to get there. We want to eliminate aspects of behavior or body or emotion that we consider to be wrong. We head off to conquer ourselves into submission, to control within ourselves what, may we all be blessed enough to learn, is not really controllable. I am grateful to my country and also to my faith tradition for embracing a change I believe is important in the acknowledgement that Columbus Day and its stories given to early generations about Columbus and his mission were propaganda for a cultural supremacy that 700 years later continues to cause violent harm among humans. The qualities and characteristics needed to be a conqueror require a kind of judgment of others and their activities that does not build compassion and does not increase our impulses toward equity with one another. Instead, it calls for denial and elimination of something within us or outside of us or in someone else. It calls us to oppress, and oppression itself is a violence, whether we do it to ourselves or to others. 60 or 70 years later, we cannot simply undo by sheer will the deeper, unrecognized emotional and social learnings of the Columbus as explorer and hero story. Sheer will to conquer that childhood learning denies some deeper truths. Sheer will does not allow us to face, no matter how uncomfortable, the ways in which we were taught, but also the ways in which we learned. To value some people's worth more than others. No matter how often our religion tells us all people are worthy human beings, no matter how often we repeat that we value the inherent worth and dignity of all people and all beings, we have within us the supremacies and the need to conquer that we have been taught and that arises in the culture all around us every day. The exploration that the Zen master invites the student into, we must invite ourselves into. A process of exploration. It is not easy to explore some of the difficult feelings and learnings that we have taken in our lifetimes. It is not easy to encounter the shame and the malice and the depression and the sorrow and the grief. But until we do, we truly cannot experience the joy and the compassion for ourselves and for others. We need to teach ourselves through practice, the practice that Helsinki via Rumi calls us to. We need to learn to practice exploring curiosity, recognizing and naming the emotions and experiences that we have without becoming those emotions and experiences. In my mind, this is the work of all religions, to call us into a relationship with the wisdom of the ages that helps us unbind ourselves from the unhealthy, from the restrictive, from the oppressions within and without. And to do so without becoming unmoored from social connection and moral compasses. It is the unbinding that frees us. It frees us from the oppressions within and without. It may even free us from the greeds. How do we begin to move among ourselves from thinking like conquerors, a byproduct of our culture, to thinking like explorers, becoming truly open and curious, willing to learn a new way, willing to make change? How will you empty yourself to become an empty cup, ready to explore? What commitment will you make to your faith and your well-being, to open, to learn, to be changed? Amen. So may it be. Please rise in spirit, body as you are able. Let us sing, and if you are so moved, move your body to the fire of commitment, number 1028. You may be seated. Anne, would you extinguish the chalice? That would be great. We extinguish this chalice light, but let us not extinguish whatever peace or freedom we may have felt or glimpsed or imagined in this hour. Carry into the world the possibility of a greater freedom of being available to all. Take action, make relationships that reflect the freedom you wish for yourself and grow to extend it to all others. Explore each day something new within and around you. Shalom, assalamu alaikum, blessed be. And please join us in the parish hall for coffee and conversation following the postlude.